This day in sports history. It's April 1st, and while a lot of focus is on the men's and women's basketball Final Fours coming up in a few days, let's start today with a Frozen Four memory. On this day in 1989, the Harvard Crimson brought home the school's first ever national championship in a thriller. This year's Frozen Four is set with Denver, Western Michigan, Penn State, and Boston University packing up in a few days and heading to St. Louis to play the semifinals, beginning on the 10th. In anticipation of that, let's go back to what happened on this night 36 years ago when the Harvard Crimson hockey team played the Minnesota Gophers. And even though they were the higher seed and considered the home team on the scoreboard, Harvard was at a little bit of a disadvantage having to play this one in St. Paul, Minnesota, with about 90% of the crowd on hand supporting the Gophers in their home state. Minnesota led 1-0 at the first intermission. Harvard tied it up 6.5 minutes into the second period on a power play goal by Ted Donato, and then took the lead 4 minutes later. Gary Thorne was calling the action for ESPN that night.
Melrose is still after him. Anderson's looking for somebody to hit. Here comes Lane McDonald for Harvard. Right in front. He shoots and scores!
Minnesota tied it back up at 2 goals apiece as the teams went to the second intermission. Donato scored his second of the night when he top-shelved a backhanded shot with a little over 7 minutes left in this one. A few minutes after that, there was a little controversy. A cross-checking penalty called against Harvard was not called until after a whistle blew for icing. In the interim, Harvard had touched the puck several times. It was away from the play, and it left Harvard vulnerable, having to kill a penalty late in the game, clinging to that 1-goal lead. And of course, Minnesota took advantage.
Here's Scarta. Scarta. Back to Peterson. The shot. Hughes. A goal!
Peter Hankinson's goal tied it back up at 3 with less than 4 minutes to play, and the game went to overtime. It didn't take too long for Harvard to find the back of the net again.
The shot by McCormick is down in front. Come on, he scores! Harvard wins the national championship!
It was Harvard's first national championship win in any sport, and it's interesting to watch Crimson head coach Bill Cleary running around the ice like Jim Valvano did in '83, just looking for someone to hug after winning it. And if the name Bill Cleary sounds familiar, well, I talked about him back in February as the hero of the 1960 Forgotten Miracle on Ice, beating the Russians and winning gold, and here he is 29 years later, leading his team to a national championship. Hey, real quick, you've heard me talk a lot about the Sterling Soap Company over the past few months, and if you haven't tried out their soaps, I get it. It's not easy changing up your routine. But let me just say, if you give them a try, I'm nearly 100% certain you will have zero regrets. They carry not only bar soap, but shave soap, liquid body soap, body lotions, beard balm, lip balm, and a lot more. Plus, there are myriad scents to choose from. Their products are made with natural ingredients and scented oils, and they are committed to being environmentally conscious. And I always get a handwritten note on my packing slip, so I know it's been checked before shipping, and it's a nice little human touch in a world that seems to be going away from that. Give Sterling Soap a try today at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 2007, Morgan Pressel became the youngest woman to win an LPGA Major Tournament. This was the Kraft Nabisco Championship, and by all thoughts, considerations, and prognostications, this was not supposed to be the super team to be winning a golf tournament, let alone a major championship. When Michelle Wie exploded on the scene, most people figured that she would be the one walking up 18, waving at the crowd with a major tournament win in hand. She'd been the youngest to make the cut at a major in 2003 as a 13-year-old. Or maybe Paula Creamer, who'd finished second to Christy Kerr at the ShopRite Classic in 2005 as an 18-year-old. But then again, why not Pressel? She'd been the youngest to qualify for the Women's U.S. Open in 2001 as a 12-year-old. And as a 16-year-old amateur in 2005, she had made the cut in all 5 of the LPGA events that she had played in. But even on this day, It looked like a top 5 finish was going to be about as good as it was going to get. She started the day 4 groups ahead of the leaders, and as she was finishing up her round, tournament leader Suzanne Pedersen was on 15 with a 4-shot lead over Pressel. But there's something about being the leader in the clubhouse, right? Pressel hit her 3rd shot to the par 5 18th and left herself a makeable putt for birdie. Here's Vern Lundquist calling the action for CBS that day.
At the 18th, Morgan Pressel, 2 under par. This for birdie.
Left edge putt.
First in. She's going to post a score of 3 under for the tournament.
The putt was for a 69 on the day, and as Vern said, 3 under for the tournament. At about the same time, Pedersen was hacking out of the rough at 15, and she made bogey. She made double bogey at 16 and fell back into a tie with Pressel. Pedersen hiccuped again at 17, making bogey, and after 3 holes, she now needed a birdie at 18 just to force a playoff. Playing with Pedersen that day was Sayri Pak, who had been in contention until troubles on the back 9 derailed her chance at winning. Pak's issues continued at 18 when she hit her 2nd into the water over the green. And I only bring that up because Pak took a really long time getting a ruling on her drop, which caused Pedersen to wait a longer time before she could actually take a run at the cup for a playoff-forcing birdie putt.
And it's really going to affect Suzanne Pedersen. She certainly does not need more time to think about this upcoming putt.
Pedersen had to wait about 10 minutes while Pak got everything sorted out and walked back to the drop zone and hit her next shot. It was an inordinate amount of time to stare at a putt of that magnitude, but she finally got her chance.
For birdie for the tie, and she didn't quite hit it enough. Morgan Pressel, 18 years, 10 months, 9 days.
Pressel eclipsed the mark as the youngest major tournament winner on the LPGA by about 14 months. Sandra Post held the record until that moment. Post won the 1968 LPGA Championship at 20 years, 9 days old. Pressel is now 3rd on that youngest to win list, behind Lydia Ko and Brooke Henderson. On this day in 1996, it was a tragic start to the Major League Baseball season, as home plate umpire John McSherry collapsed and died during a game. It was opening day in the major leagues, and at Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium, it was the Reds and the Montreal Expos starting the year off with a 3-game series. Just 7 pitches into the game, McSherry called time, said something to Cincinnati catcher Eddie Taubensee, and started to walk back to the door behind home plate. He turned and motioned to another umpire to replace him, and continued walking towards the tunnel before he collapsed. CPR efforts were started on the field immediately, but were unsuccessful. He was taken to a local hospital, where he was pronounced dead. McSherry had just started working his 25th Major League season. There was a discussion about whether the game should continue after his passing. The players were visibly upset and did not want to continue. The remaining umpire crew called the game off, and in fact, all the games around the league scheduled that day were postponed until the following day. But Reds owner Marge Schott, never one to hold an opinion in, seemed to be the only one who actually wanted to play, saying afterwards that she felt cheated that the game did not continue. John McSherry was 51. On this day in 1985, it was one of the most amazing NCAA tournament upsets, and it came in the title game. So, a few things before I dive into this one. This was the first year the tournament had expanded to 64 teams, and it was also the last year that there was not a shot clock. Both of those things actually figure in with what happened in this game. Villanova made the tournament by the narrowest of margins. They had finished the regular season 19-10, 9-7 in the Big East with only 1 win over a top 25 team. They lost in the semifinals of the Big East tournament, So it's a pretty good bet that the Wildcats would not have made the tournament at all if the NCAA had not expanded from 53 to 64 teams. The absence of a shot clock figured throughout their run in the tournament. On their way to the championship game on this night, the Wildcats had used the stall game to beat Dayton by a pair, shortened the game against top-seeded Michigan to win by 4, held Len Bias to just 8 points and Maryland overall to just 43 in their 3-point win to make the Elite Eight. Raleigh Massimino then outmaneuvered the inventor of the four corners with his own version as the Wildcats beat North Carolina 58-44 to get to the Final Four. Top seeds and Big East companions St. John's and Georgetown both made the Final Four, marking the first time 3 teams from the same conference had made the Final Four in the same year. The Wildcats then held Memphis State to their lowest offensive output of the season in a 52-45 win to move on to the championship game, setting up a rematch with Georgetown, a team that they had not beaten in their 2 meetings that season, and no one gave them a chance. As an 8 seed coming in, Vegas had Villanova's odds of winning the tournament before the start of it at 35-1. And just for reference, NC State 2 years prior was a 6 seed and 25-1 to win the title before it started. Add to that the Hoyas were the defending national champs. They had Patrick Ewing, who would soon be the top pick in the NBA draft. The only way that Villanova could win is if they played a near-perfect game. And of course, they did. A lot of that credit goes to Villanova guard Gary McLean, who played the full 40 minutes, handled the Georgetown pressure, and only committed 2 turnovers. Villanova only took 28 shots and made 23 of them. That's 79% shooting, and of course, shooting that well negates the need for offensive rebounding against a dominating inside presence like Ewing. By contrast, the Hoyas took 53 shots, and they made 55% of them. Not bad, but not good enough on this night. With a little more than 2.5 to play, Harold Jensen gave Villanova the lead.
Broadnax having to help out inside. Jensen puts Villanova ahead at the 2:35 mark.
Ice water in his veins. They gave him the shot, and he took it.
From that point on, the Wildcats stalled, got fouled, hit most of their free throws, rinse and repeat. Final score, 66-64 Villanova, and they had won their first men's basketball national championship. So, a couple of additional things. Villanova, as an 8, is still the lowest seed to ever win it all. There was a lot of talk several years later about Gary McLean being high on cocaine during this game, but he admitted later that he did cocaine prior to the Memphis game in the semifinals, not before the championship game, and then he took a few snorts before meeting President Ronald Reagan during the team's visit to the White House. Also on this day in 1991, it was Mike Krzyzewski and Duke winning their first men's basketball national title with the 72-65 win over Roy Williams and Kansas. This game was bookended by a couple of dunks. First, the spectacular alley-oop from Bobby Hurley to Grant Hill.
Leitner tracks down the rebound.
Kubeck with a great slough, and he's all right.
He'll call for it. Oh, can you believe he got that high?
Jim, that ball was thrown to the point that it was going out of bounds. I don't know how he got up there to get it.
I never thought he would save it, much less dunk it.
That was a David Thompson-type dunk from yesteryear.
And then Brian Davis with the game-sealing exclamation point to provide the final margin.
Maybe that's what caused it. Oh, they got Davis on the break, and a shield by Leitner to help it.
That is ball game.
Duke won 72-65 to claim their first of their 5 national championships. This was just the second meeting between these two coaches and the first in the postseason. Krzyzewski and Williams would go head-to-head a total of 44 times, with most of those meetings coming when Roy was the head coach at North Carolina. And speaking of amazing dunks, on this day in 2000, Michael Wild Thing Wilson set a Guinness World Record for the highest dunk.
In my lifetime, it would have to be one of the more amazing feats that I've seen accomplished on a basketball court.
Let's see if he does it here. He did it!
my God, 12 feet, a new world record.
Wilson had played at Memphis with Penny Hardaway in the late 90s. He went on to play 11 seasons with the Harlem Globetrotters, and his 12-foot dunk is still the recognized world record. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. There is a death metal band named Hatebreak, whose lead singer is a parrot.
What you talking about, Willis?
They have songs titled Bird Seeds of Vengeance, Roost in Peace, and Beak of Putrefaction. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.